Heather.
And I'm Michelle. And welcome back to
Mo Murder, Mo Crime.
This episode, we will be discussing the shooting of Michael Brown Jr., a young, unarmed African-American man who was killed by a white police officer in Ferguson, Missouri. Brown's death and the following grand jury ruling ignited protests, riots, and vandalism in St. Louis suburban city and across the world due to increasing racial tensions between law enforcement and the African-American community. Michael Brown's death is one of the many incidences in recent years that have catapulted the Black Lives Matter movement across the world, bringing awareness to civil rights issues people of African American descent still face today. So big topic, very controversial.
Really big.
Do you remember hearing about it? Like, where were you?
I do remember hearing about it. It was in 2014. We just graduated college, probably had my big professional non-school job. After I heard about it, I watched the news reports.
Yeah.
Like almost everyone else, if not in Missouri, the world, was doing.
Yeah. And I was, that weekend when it happened, I was actually in St. Louis. I was at my cousin's bridal shower helping set up and everything, and I remember after getting home and just being exhausted, seeing the news report and being like, oh my God, this poor family. And, I thought it was just a local news report. I didn't expect it to be, national, international news and escalate to what it became. It was definitely just overwhelming in a sense, like, oh, this city, this area became like a huge beacon, and I never would have thought that this Ferguson would be this today.
Yeah, I mean, Ferguson still talked about today, and this was, 6 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
God,
6, 7, yeah.
6, 7 years ago?
2021.
It's 2021 now, not 2020.
Oh, it's almost, yeah. Time flies. Okay, you ready? On August 9, 2014, Michael Brown and his friend, 22-year-old Dorian Johnson, were walking in the middle of Canfield Drive, heading towards apartments where Brown's grandmother lived. Eventually, Officer Darren Wilson of Ferguson Police came upon the two driving in his police SUV and told them to get on the sidewalk. After explaining to the officer that they were almost to their destination and would be out of the road soon, there was an altercation and struggle at the officer's police cruiser between Wilson and Brown. Moments later, Michael Brown's lifeless body laid in the middle of the street in front of his grandmother's apartment complex. He was shot at least 6 to 8 times, with evidence indicating that Officer Wilson's gun was discharged 12 times during the incident. As hours passed, family, friends, and neighbors continued to gather around the scene where Brown's body laid exposed on the street. Due to the transition from the Ferguson Police to the St. Louis County Police taking over the case, officers responding to additional gunshots in the area at the time and the distraught and aggressive onlookers on the scene that the police are trying to settle down were considered to be the multiple reasons why Brown's body laid in the 98-degree St. Louis heat for 4.5 hours. One of those hours leaving him uncovered to onlookers. Residents of the area were visibly upset with the events and the lack of response and treatment of Michael Brown's body, and police eventually called in SWAT team and K-9 units to the scene to help control the crowd. That wasn't why. I don't understand why they would leave. Well, I understand why they would leave. They explained it, but what?
They left a boy shot in the middle of the street in front of his grandmother's apartment complex. Mm-hmm. So family, friends, community were out there.
Yeah. For
hours in the scorching heat that is known as our summer here in Missouri.
It's very humid, and like I said, it was 98 degrees. 98 degrees. And the heat... Not that one. And the heat index was 105. And it's humid heat, and an hour for that time he was left exposed. So if his family was there, they could see his kids were there.
Oh gosh, I didn't even think about that.
So many people, like, they were crowding around the street. They did tape it off, but
you could still see it.
It was very, in a sense, very disrespectful, and it took, because of, the Ferguson, they couldn't control the incident. They couldn't control the case because, you know, one of their officers was involved.
So they had to get an outside jurisdiction to come in. I mean, that's protocol.
Yeah, and it took 70 minutes for the detectives to come, and then it took a while, maybe like 2 hours for the medical examiner to come. And so it was just like, and they were concerned about shots being fired at the time. It was frustrating. I don't blame the people there for being frustrated.
Yeah. There was a lack of, you know,
professionalism, respect.
Yeah, I mean,
someone died. We need to get this.
Someone from that community died.
Yes.
In front of family and friends and everyone, and it took 4.5 hours.
10 days after Michael Brown's death, memorials and protests throughout the city and St. Louis area were held in his honor. However, things escalated with some protesters showing their frustration with the police by looting and vandalizing local Ferguson businesses and confronting police officers in the street, blocking off the area of the city. Police responded by using tear gas, smoke bombs, rubber, and beanbag bullets, along with various other riot gear equipment to break up and control the crowds. Multiple arrests were made for assault, burglary, and theft. As tensions in Ferguson continued to heighten, Governor Jay Nixon declared a state of emergency and ordered the National Guard to come in on August 16th and implemented a curfew for the city of Ferguson. Yet intense protests and violent riots continued until August 21st, where Governor Nixon withdrew the National Guard after witnessing improvement of the social unrest going on in the St. Louis area and the protests becoming more peaceful. On the day of Mike Brown's funeral, on August 25th, protests and riots stopped due to the request of the Brown family. Thousands attended the funeral to support his family. Following his funeral, many protests were performed in the St. Louis area, with additional arrests made over the next 2 to 3 months, leading up to the grand jury's ruling in the end of November.
Days, people rioting, destroying buildings and businesses and homes.
And protesting. I remember seeing images of them getting on the highway, and it was peaceful, but they were, you know, blocking traffic, and police, you know, were not happy about that.
I understand.
Yeah.
But at the same time, at least they were good enough to stop all protesting for his funeral. Like, that's...
It was a nice thing to do. It was respectful, and they just wanted to, you know, bury their son and have, you know, celebrate his life.
Yeah.
And they did that, and they had 2 people, you know, talk at the eulogy wise, and I believe one of them was Reverend Al Sharpton, and another one, he indicated, you know, people in the community to vote for change, to have, you know, more, because this community was obviously black-dominated residents, but the people in charge, the police, the political people in charge, the mayor, were all white, pretty much. And they wanted, you know, to see that their community reflected in who was running the city. And so this person said, vote, and hopefully that will help change the community for the better.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, this incident, you know, helped cause, you know, to wake people up in a sense. But it was a good thing. I think he mentioned that. So, you know, let's change this for the better kind of thing.
Yeah.
In the honor of Mike Brown.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, this shouldn't have happened.
No.
Like, this shouldn't have had people waking up saying, hey, maybe we should have our community reflected with, you know, of what we want in office.
Michael Brown Jr. was an 18-year-old African-American man living with his family in the St. Louis suburban city of Ferguson, Missouri. Throughout his life, Brown struggled with his education, but he was dedicated and determined to graduate high school, even though his high school had a 62% graduation rate. On August 1st, 2014, Mike graduated from Normandy High School and had plans to attend Battle College for heating and air conditioning training program. But Mike's true aspiration was to become a rapper. His family mentioned that he was always writing down rhymes and lyrics, and he posted a few of his songs online under the handle Big Mike. He earned the nickname due to his large stature, being 6'4" and almost 300 pounds. Although most would consider Brown to be intimidating due to his size, he was considered a gentle giant and had a great love and respect for his family and just wanted to provide for them.
That's sweet.
Yeah, and that community, Ferguson, I mean, it's the place to get away from the inner city. I mean, it's not, in a sense, the best neighborhood, but they wanted to, he said...
I mean, it's better than the inner city.
Yes, and it was basically a safe haven.
With most big cities, there is an inner city.
Yeah.
Inner city's known for crime.
Yeah. And in a sense, like, Ferguson was a safe kind of haven for people in the black community that didn't want to be involved in, violence and the gangs that was in the inner city. And like he said, he just wanted to provide for his family, he wanted to support them. And because, he was, mostly lived in apartments with his parents, his grandmother. He just wanted a better life for them. I think that's what
everyone wants. Everyone wants a better life.
Whether you're black, white, Asian.
Doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. So,
you want the best for you and your family.
Yeah, and he wanted to do that, and he felt like finally, overcoming the struggles with his education, that he was on the right path to do that.
Yeah, no, it sounds it.
Okay, so Darren Wilson was a 28-year-old Caucasian police officer of the Ferguson, Missouri Police Department. He was also 6'4" in height and weighed about 210 pounds. A 5-year veteran of the police force, Wilson was interested in a position in the North County of St. Louis, where it had a higher percentage of crime as well as African-American residences. Wilson believed if he was working in a rougher part of the St. Louis area, it would help propel his police career. Wilson's police career with the Ferguson Police Department had its ups and downs. In 2013, he was awarded a commendation from the Ferguson police after apprehending a suspect with marijuana in their possession with intent to distribute and resisting arrest. That same year, he also violated a man's human rights, which was caught on tape with Wilson stating that he will arrest the man if he did not stop taking pictures of him. The man, who was white, videotaping on his front porch, told Officer Wilson he was videotaping the incident and then asked the officer, doesn't he have the right to do so? In which Wilson replied that he did not have the right to videotape him. Wilson also had 4 ped checks, or pedestrian checks, on his record, where he stopped residents on the street without probable cause. In their investigation of the department late 2014, the Justice Department stated that officers of Ferguson would be punished if they did not write enough tickets, so most police officers would write multiple citations for a single stop. This in turn made Wilson and other police officers on the force feel pressure to meet their ticket quotas on a monthly basis.
Okay, first one, marijuana.
It was a different time.
It was 7 years ago.
They weren't, as lax. When did we get medical marijuana approved? A few years ago, 2018. I don't remember.
Yeah, it was like 2018, but then 2020 was when it was like you're seeing all the CD shops, CBD shops opening, and what was he doing to the guy to make him film?
So it was an order to comply. So it was basically, trying to think. What I recall is this man had broken down cars in his front yard and basically made his front yard look like not suitable for the public. So it was a citation saying like you need to comply and you need to clean up your front yard basically and not have a junkyard of cars. I don't know exactly what caused him to start, videotaping him, since you can say like you need to stop, taking pictures of me kind of thing. And then he said like, I'm videotaping you, is that not a right? And then obviously he said no, that is not a right for you to do that, but it is a right.
It's a right.
It is a right. And then basically what I recall is that they kind of talk some more, argue some more, and it turns off, and then the man seems to comply. There wasn't, any aggression or it was a weird situation kind of thing. But it was, an incident where it gave proof that, Wilson didn't follow, the law basically, and, mistreated someone's human rights.
Yeah.
So.
Alright, continue.
Okay. According to Officer Wilson's statement, after responding to a previous call, he heard over his radio that there was a robbery and the suspect had fled. He called back in to confirm if they needed assistance in looking for the suspect. He then came upon Mike Brown and Dorian Johnson walking in the middle of Canfield Drive. He asked Brown and Johnson to move to the sidewalk as he drove up to them. As he was driving away, he heard Brown say something insulting and stopped to respond to him and reversed his car. Brown approached the officer's window and began to yell and punch Wilson through his open window. Wilson then stated that Brown handed what appeared to be cigarillos to Johnson and continued hitting and punching him and attempted to reach for his gun in Wilson's waistband. Fearing for his life, Wilson pulled out his gun, telling Brown to stop, that he would be shot, or he would shoot. Brown told the officer that he wouldn't shoot him and continued to struggle with Wilson over the gun. Considering that the other options he could use to stop Brown, such as mace or a baton, Wilson decided to shoot his gun twice, hitting Brown once. Brown and Johnson fled down the street and Wilson got out of the car to pursue them, radioing in for backup before calling to Brown to stop and get on the ground. Wilson then claims that Brown turned around and charged him. Wilson noticed that Brown was reaching for his waistband with his right hand. Wilson fired his gun multiple times at a charging Brown. Wilson paused and stopped Brown, told Brown to get on the ground, but Brown kept running towards him and Wilson began shooting again. One of these shots hit Brown in the head, which finally stopped him.
Other things could have happened besides shooting, like mace,
yeah,
baton.
I mean,
he was still in his car. He could have drove.
Yeah, he had the time to, call in, get out and call in the radio. Why didn't he think of, like, yeah, I have my gun in my hand, but you can easily put it back in and grab the mace.
Yeah.
Because if any, I don't know.
It's like, and then he said that he saw him reaching in he could have just been holding up his pants. He didn't have a belt on.
Yeah.
I know if I'm running, which I don't run, but if I had to run, I would have to hold my pants up to run because they are falling off.
Yeah, and so you know how that was a trend. It may still be a trend for big baggy pants, and so
I think all people like big baggy pants, honestly.
But this sense of like big pants, and then sometimes you see the underwear.
Yeah.
That it was evident that Brown had baggy pants on, and he was running. And it could have possibly he didn't want his pants down to his ankles. No. So, and there was actually, images after the fact. You can see that his pants were basically below his butt, almost to his knees. Dorian Johnson was a primary eyewitness to Mike Brown's shooting. Johnson states that he and Brown were walking down the middle of the street when Officer Wilson stopped beside them and demanded for them to get on the sidewalk. They explained to the officer that they were almost to their destination and will be out of the street soon. Wilson was driving away when he then stopped and reversed his vehicle and stopped in front of the two African-American men. Officer Wilson tried to then open his door, but the door hit both Brown and Johnson as they walked by and it bounced back, forcing Wilson back into his vehicle. Johnson then says that Wilson reached out and grabbed Brown's throat, choking him. Mike began shaking the car and tugging back and forth, with Wilson trying to get free from his hold. Johnson claims Wilson grabbed his gun and fired it towards Brown, hitting him. The two young men then ran from the officer. Johnson stated he stopped on the sidewalk behind the car, out of breath and out of sight of the officer. But Mike kept running down the street. He then saw Officer Wilson get out of his vehicle and shoot at Brown as he was retreating, hitting Mike in the back. Mike then stopped to turn around and raised his hand as he walked forward, indicating that he had stopped running, he was unarmed, and wanted Wilson to stop shooting at him. As Brown walked towards the officer with his hands up, Wilson began shooting again. Mike began to fall to the ground as Wilson kept shooting him. There were 5 to 6 other witnesses at the scene that corroborated with Dorian Johnson's statement, seeing Mike's hands up toward the officer in a form of surrender. This action inspired the slogan, "Hands up, don't shoot," that would be chanted in future Black Lives Matter protests.
It's still said.
Well,
like the one in California, like they were wearing masks and stuff that said that.
Well, yeah, the future,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now.
It's happened in 2014. On August 20th, the grand jury of Missouri versus Darren Wilson began investigating to see if Officer Darren Wilson would be indicted for the shooting and death of Michael Brown Jr. Wilson will be tried for either of the following offenses: first-degree murder, intentionally killing Brown, second-degree murder, knowingly causing Brown's death or intending to cause serious injury, voluntary manslaughter, killing Brown under the influence of sudden passion, first-degree involuntary manslaughter, recklessly causing Brown's death, or second-degree involuntary manslaughter, acting with criminal negligence that resulted in the killing of Michael Brown Jr. There need to be 9 votes to indict Officer Darren Wilson. It's a lot to choose from.
Just 5.
Yeah, and it's kind of weird that they had to choose. Well, this is what we're charging him.
Murder, second-degree murder.
Yeah.
You know, but we're charging him for this.
Yeah.
Do we indict?
Yeah.
That's the whole thing with a grand jury. Right.
Okay. The prosecuting attorney of St. Louis County, Robert Mcculloch, was in charge of the prosecution. However, 2 assistant prosecuting attorneys handled the grand jury hearings. At the time, Mcculloch was the St. Louis County prosecuting attorney for 23 years, and during those years, not one police officer was indicted for killing someone they had shot and killed. He informed the public that if Wilson was not indicted, that the grand jury documents would be released and available for public to view.
But if he was indicted, he wouldn't release them?
Exactly.
So, was he planning on never to indict? Because...
we don't know. Like, he didn't make the decision. It was a grand jury.
Right.
So...
seems like a weird ultimatum. Like, you should re-release pages and court documents out to the public even if you're indicted, I feel like, right?
Well, I guess if he did get indicted, it would eventually go to trial.
Okay.
And so that needed to be protected for the trial. I'm not good with law.
We're not lawyers.
No. We did watch How to Get Away with Murder.
We did. Good show.
I guess it makes sense, like, if he did get indicted, that it wouldn't be released, because it would be, I guess...
it would be out in the court, and the court documents would have it.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about the autopsies. Okay. 3 autopsies were performed on Michael Brown's body. One by the St. Louis County, an independent autopsy requested by the family, and a federal autopsy ordered by Attorney General Holder. All 3 autopsies concluded that Brown was shot at least 6 times. He was shot twice in the face, and that there were no shots in his back. He was only shot while facing Wilson, and the findings did not support accounts that Brown was shot while running away with his hands up.
Okay.
So for the first autopsy, before the ruling of the grand jury, the county's autopsy report was leaked to the St. Louis Post-Dispatch in October. The county's autopsy indicated that Brown was shot once in the thumb of his right hand at a close range, hitting the tip of his thumb going through his wrist. Ouch. It is believed that this happened while he was struggling with Officer Wilson at the SUV. Before the autopsy was leaked, it was assumed that Brown was just shot from a distance, not at close range. Blood and tissue samples confirmed to be Brown's were found in and on the exterior of the SUV, corroborating that altercation happened at the vehicle. There was also evidence of blood on Officer Wilson's gun, which is also Brown's. An expert claimed that this supported Wilson's claim that Brown was reaching for the officer's gun. However, the detective performing the test on Wilson's gun admitted that he had to choose to perform one of 2 tests on the gun, either a DNA test or just for fingerprints, because only one test could be performed without affecting the results of the other. He also mentioned that he found the gun in an unsealed envelope, which is not typical police procedure. That's not good. Someone didn't do their job.
I don't understand why you had to pick and choose the test. Because if you're reaching for a gun, and if it was on, like,
I mean,
and like, he was shot,
I assume they had to do the test. Like he said, he had to choose which one. I assume he had to test the whole gun, not just the specific
area that
area.
had the blood and tissue.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, if it was in his holder, like you said, you would assume that,
the handprint fingerprints would be on the handle,
yeah,
and then on the barrel itself, that's where he was shot, so that's where you would assume the blood and tissue is.
Yeah, so, but if he, according to, Dorian's statement on how things happen, if he pulled out the gun, if Wilson just pulled out the gun and just, decided to shoot him, like, you would think maybe if he was trying to, Brown was trying to stop him,
right?
His fingerprints would be also on the barrel of the gun.
Yeah.
And not just on the handle.
Yeah.
Well, so we don't know exactly what happened.
And the gun was in an unsealed envelope, which goes against regulation of almost every single court and police show that we've ever seen.
Yeah, and so it's assumed that maybe blood was planted on it.
Yeah, you can see
Well, it makes sense. I guess it wouldn't be planted on it because it's evident that he got shot in the hand.
Yeah.
Like, so his blood and tissue would be on the barrel either way.
Yeah.
Even if it was, it would, I don't think they planted the blood.
No, because he was obviously shot, and they did
but
ballistics showing that it was that. Yeah, it could have definitely been contaminated. Something could have been changed somehow.
Yeah. Very frustrating. And then, the autopsy was leaked.
Yeah.
That's not... And
that's not
people assume that Darren Wilson's camp possibly did it.
Okay.
But, there's no proof that he did.
Right.
So, anyway. The shot to the forehead, top of the head, indicated that Brown was falling forward or in a lunge position, facing towards the shooter. It was the fatal shot, most likely the final shot. One of the shots in his forearm traveled from the back of the arm to the inner arm, providing evidence that his palms could not have been facing Wilson due to the trajectory of the bullet entering and exiting the arm. However, there are reports describing gunshot wounds on his right arm that entered and exited coming from both the front of the palm, facing forward, or like this, and the back facing backward.
Okay, so either like this, or like this, like that. Okay.
Toxicology tests revealed trace THC or marijuana in his blood and urine, which he took within hours of his death. But the findings could not confirm whether or not it impaired his judgment or slowed his reaction time at the time of the incident.
So
I've not
he had
met an angry, supposed pothead.
I've never met an angry pothead.
I've never met an angry person who does pot. And it doesn't say, it said within hours. If they just tested the urine, it stays in your system for 30 days. If they're testing your hair,
days ago,
if they test your hair, it's technically 6 months. And they can't say how much the analysis is on it.
His autopsy was limited because Brown's body was washed, embalmed, and evidence was taken by the medical examiner that performed the autopsy on behalf of the county previously. Baden stated that Brown was shot 4 times in the arm, the right arm, once in the eye, and once in the top of the skull. He said all rounds were shot at a close distance, about 1 foot. He did not have access to the victim's clothing or x-rays of the body locating the bullets in the body, which 3 were discovered per the original autopsy. This autopsy was scrutinized due to Dr. Baden being assisted by Sean Parcels, who was self-taught pathologist and did not have the credentials in medical or forensic pathology.
What?
Yeah, he's a questionable character. He said he just assisted Dr. Baden, who was he's been in the business of pathology and forensic pathology for decades. He did the autopsy on JFK. And he either recently retired or he came out of retirement to help, the Brown family. But this John Parcels person, he was eventually, found for fraud and, facing criminal charges now. He's a character.
So he made up his credentials. He has no... Did they not know when they look at his resume to check references, guys? He's not a doctor.
No.
He's self-taught.
No, he was professor at some school in Kansas.
Kansas.
We like Kansas.
Why don't you check references if you hire a professor to teach people?
I don't know.
So self-taught. He assisted, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but I feel like why the hell did they check him over before you hire an assistant? Like, no medical training.
No.
No credentials whatsoever.
No.
No certifications.
No.
So did he
He was
basically just
just-
go online and be like, how to be a pathologist? Oh, look, there's an article about it. You know what? That's like me saying I'm going to go be a brain surgeon. I'll see you later. I'm going to go practice.
He was just very passionate about pathology. Forensic pathology.
So he lied about his credentials, I guess? Because how
I
else
don't-
would you get these jobs?
I don't...
And
Why
you
would
said
they hire him as a professor?
You said he's got accounts on him now for fraud, right?
Yes. This is very recent, 2020. So yes, similar conclusions to the previous two autopsies. The autopsy revealed that Brown died of multiple gunshot wounds and had severe head and chest injuries, and a close-range wound to his right hand. However, it was noted that the chest injury was possibly an exit wound from a shot that entered Brown's arm. So, if he was just shot in the front, there was a hole here and a hole here, but I think in the autopsy it showed that the eye one went through his chin and it hit him
down
there. And then
Okay.
there was one here chest-wise and there was one right next to it. So
Okay.
if he was, I guess, running towards Wilson, like this, or maybe like this, but it wasn't. They said somewhere in the back. They said, what did I say? The back of the arm? Exit wound from the shot injured Brown's arm. No, that doesn't help me. I don't know. There was no stuff here. Just on here.
Just on his right arm.
Yeah. And so right hand wound.
This is the right. Yeah.
That's your left.
Yeah.
So right hand, and then there was one like on the forearm, one closer to the elbow area, and there was the four, and then one up here near the armpit, and then another chest. So I assume that's the one. And then the top of the head, and then the eye, and then
And that one is the
yeah,
one that
went
went
fair
down.
to the chin, and then
Down
to the
to the
collarbone.
collarbone. Okay.
Okay, the crime scene presented to the grand jury the shooting scene extending about 184 feet along Canfield Drive. There were two casings located outside the SUV indicating that there were some kind of struggle, and Wilson's gun was shot from inside the car with two bloodstains outside the driver's side of the car. There were an additional two groupings of bloodstains at the furthest point of the scene, about 184 feet from the SUV. Brown's body laid about 153 feet away from the vehicle with the head facing it. There was an apparent projectile and 10 additional casings scattered near Brown's body. The evidence indicated that the distribution and location of the casings were consistent with officer moving backward while firing. The 25 feet blood splatter behind Brown's body showed that he was moving forward as he was being shot. Photographs of the body at the scene were not taken by the medical investigator, but the investigator testified to the grand jury that Brown's right hand was extended and its left hand was under his body near his waistband, which contradicted Wilson's statement of Brown reaching inside his waistband with his right hand. Okay. There was also audio recordings evidence of the shooting where the shots could be heard in the background. After analyzing the recording, experts heard 6 shots, a short pause, then 4 additional shots from the audio providing evidence. The recording also revealed that these 10 shots were fired within a 3-foot radius, indicating that the shooter was not moving as he was shooting. So, more contradictory information.
Right.
So the physical evidence says, oh, the shooter's running away and kind of far away.
Right, while the sound bits are like, oh no, it's all the sound coming from that. But I mean, how far back did it say that Wilson was going? Like, did it say how, like, when you take a step back, that's less than half a foot, right? I don't know, depending how big your foot is, I suppose.
I don't think I saw anything about that, or how far he did, give back, if he was going back or not. I don't know.
Alright.
Darren Wilson showed little injuries, just having a bruise on his right lower cheek jaw area, which were documented hour after the incident took place. The toxicology report indicated that he had no drugs or alcohol in his system. So,
Where was it?
right here,
It was on the opposite side of his face of where.
his right cheek. His
So
right cheek.
yeah, so he turns his head. Well, I guess that's where he would, if he got punched at, because you want to punch there.
Yeah.
You would punch it because driver's side. So
yeah, the left side's being faced.
Right.
So he's facing.
So he's turning his body, or at least his head, and he gets punched
in the left arm, because it's a right.
Yeah.
So if you're facing, that's Mike Brown's left, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and now most people are right-handed.
Most people are right-handed, so.
Yeah. This way, and this is the right cheek. So Darren Wilson said he was in fear for his life, and he mentioned that he felt like a 5-year-old fighting Hulk Hogan, and he saw demon eyes looking at Brown as he was being basically attacked by him.
Demon eyes?
Yes, demonic eyes.
Is that what he said?
Yeah, I'm pretty positive.
Wow.
that I recall that.
But he doesn't have the physical evidence that shows that if it's only a small bruise on the left side of his face, right side of his face.
It was a big chunk here.
It's that could just be one punch. But again, you shouldn't punch people.
No. Didn't, match him.
His description. I mean,
exactly.
it makes it sound like he's
crazy
being
person.
pummeled.
Yeah.
Which, roll up your window, drive forward, call for backup. If that's happening.
Yes. Oh yeah, there's that. Unlike most crime scenes, Darren Wilson did not make a statement at the scene of the crime, but after he was able to drive back to the station by himself, clean up, wash his hands, and check his own gun into an evidence bag. His initial interviews at the station were not taped and were conducted with other personnel present. Experts and media outlets complained about these unconventional forensic practices and police procedures, along with various others that were present in the grand jury documents.
Well, yeah, that's really unorthodox. He would have been in shock, shooting someone, shooting a boy.
Yeah.
And then he drove himself, instead of going to the hospital, instead of having EMTs
waiting,
checking on you, taking you to the hospital. That's one reason the gun was in an unsealed bag. He put it in himself.
Yeah. You would think he would still, follow procedure, but...
Did he take his own car?
It seemed, with the scene, I think the car was still there.
Okay. Yeah, because they did say the evidence, blood and gun traces.
Yeah, so basically called in, and someone came to the scene seconds after the incident happened, and more people came, started taking it off, and then his chief came, and basically it's you need to leave. And I don't know whom. And
they didn't shoot his face, not shoot, but pictures. They didn't.
Not until he went to the hospital hours later.
That's really unorthodox.
Yeah. It's not looking good. It's not professional.
Not at all.
Very questionable. Okay, throughout the investigation, there were multiple witness statements heard by jurors that support both varying events of what happened during the shooting that were told by Officer Wilson and Dorian Johnson in some capacity. But due to the autopsy reporting that all the shots hit Brown while he was facing Wilson, Johnson's testimony, along with others indicating that Brown was shot in the back while he ran away from Wilson or having his hands up, were discredited. There were also many testimonies that contradicted Wilson that appeared to have lied under oath. There were a few witnesses that admitted or were discovered to not even be present at the scene of the crime at the time, while others made statements that did not support the forensic evidence or gave inconsistent accounts of the events causing them to discredit them as well. It is important to note that there were no witnesses that supported Wilson's statement that he told Brown to get on the ground.
Okay, so people lied under oath
Yes. So
for perjury.
Perjury. So yeah, there was one witness that basically read the article of what happened, and they said they just wanted to be part of something, and so
they lied so they could be part of the story.
yeah.
I mean, that's how most history is conducted, but still.
Yeah, and it seemed like most of the witnesses that supported Darren Wilson, they were in fear for their life, and these weren't just law enforcement witnesses. They were, people of the community, biracial, black, but they were afraid because they were going to be attacked because they, discredited someone in the community that was basically them. They said that, they saw Mike Brown assault Officer Wilson, and basically it was just self-defense. So they were afraid for their lives.
Because people in their community were threatening them if they came forward.
Yes. But it's interesting, no one stated that they heard him
say go down on the ground.
Yeah. But he
said he did.
Yes. On the night of November 24th, attorney prosecutor Robert Mcculloch announced that grand jury verdict. Crowds gathered on the street outside the police station and municipal court building of Ferguson waiting for the grand jury's decision. About a week before the announcement, on November 17th, Governor of Missouri again called the National Guard due to declaring another state of emergency in anticipation of the grand jury's decision. Mcculloch announced that grand jury decided that there was not enough probable cause to indict Officer Darren Wilson of any of the offenses for shooting and the death of Michael Brown Jr. After the announcement was made, there were mixed reactions by the public. While there were peaceful protests, which was encouraged by the Brown family, many protesters soon became violent, causing destruction, fire, and vandalism to local Ferguson and neighboring city of Delwood businesses and buildings, which were also looted. Many police and non-police vehicles on the streets were also set on fire and vandalized. The rioters were also throwing bottles, rocks, and batteries at the police. The police again responded with tear gas, smoke bombs, and rubber bullets, trying to control the unruly crowd. Those arrested were charged with burglary and trespassing. It was reported that there were more protests and rallies in 170 cities across the nation and world that occurred in response to the grand jury's decision that were more peaceful.
I remember watching the riotings, honestly, and what I remember was wasn't people from Ferguson that were doing the destruction of the buildings, of the homes, of the cars. It was people from outside the city.
Yeah, and I don't know exactly where all these people came from, but
all over the country.
Yeah, all over the country. Who knows? But these people just wanted, it was their home. Why would they want to destroy it?
Exactly.
And it's just, it was very frustrating and disheartening. I remember watching it, and I'm just like, I can't believe this is happening. This is the place, I walked down the streets. I had my orthodontist building appointments there, not far from downtown, and I went to get ice cream there. It
was your childhood memories.
Yeah, and I didn't live in Ferguson, obviously, but I was a part of their memories, their connection.
Yeah.
It was just, I can't believe this place is being destroyed, and I know they've overcome it. It's taken a while, and they're,
they've rebuilt.
Exactly, and things are looking up and have been looking up for a while.
That's good.
Since Wilson was not indicted, Robert Mcculloch released thousands of pages of the grand jury documents of the trial, including physical evidence, witness statements, police and other video recordings, along with many other findings. Many experts and media outlets criticized how the investigation and grand jury proceedings were handled by Mcculloch, who most felt was biased due to the fact that his father was a police officer and was killed on the job by an African-American man, and his close relationship with the law enforcement as the prosecuting attorney of the St. Louis County. Most grand jury trials are done in secrecy, with rarely any documents from the proceedings being released, but Mcculloch transcribed the documents with the intention of releasing the information with no indictment. Yet there were many people that complained, including the Brown family, about the overall secrecy of how the proceedings were performed for the hearing, implying that there may be a possible conspiracy between law enforcement and prosecutors. In January 2015, a grand juror from the hearing filed a lawsuit against Mcculloch claiming that he handled the case poorly and it violated their First Amendment rights to talk about their experience with the public. The 8th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals ruled against the grand juror in August 2020 because she's concealed. Her name isn't revealed. Any of the grand jurors' names aren't revealed. But I just find it confusing because, you take an oath of secrecy. Mm-hmm. And I know it's just for how things were handled, not the actual evidence and all that stuff, because that obviously was leaked. I just find it, I don't know, why do you want to do this? I mean, it would be interesting to know, because I'm curious.
Yeah. And there's no other jurors that stepped forward, it was just Doe?
Yeah, as far as I know, just her.
Okay.
Unlike most grand jury cases, the jurors were in a sense co-investigators. They were provided a substantial amount of evidence to consider and review. And from that evidence, they were to determine if Wilson should be charged with a specific offense, when usually the prosecutor provides him with a specific offense that the defendant is being charged with, and the jurors have to review the evidence to see if that defendant committed the offense they are being charged with. However, this apparent unorthodox approach is allowed by law and often used for high-profile cases. Many felt if the prosecuting lawyers cut down the evidence and specifically incriminate Wilson, they would have had an indictment. Yet there are experts that believe that the exoneration of Wilson was well justified because it was believed that conviction would have not been unlikely if it went to trial.
So in all that, they gave the jurors a Mad Lib, basically, Pick between one of these 5, here's the evidence, make something stick.
Yeah, and like it was mentioned, it was a lot to process, a lot of information.
Yeah.
And it was not narrowed down of what was the exact thing that Wilson did wrong. Following the grand jury trial, information from the Department of Justice investigating into the Ferguson Police Department was released in March 2015. The investigation was separate from the shooting of Michael Brown Jr. and reported that the officers routinely violated the First, Fourth, and 14th Amendments of the Constitution of the city's citizens by discriminating against African Americans and applying racial stereotypes. Lawsuits were also filed by the Brown family and Dorian Johnson. The Brown family filed a wrongful death suit against Darren Wilson, Chief Jackson, and the city of Ferguson, and a payment settlement was awarded to the family in 2017.
Good.
2017, filmmaker and director Jason Pollock released his documentary film about Mike Brown's shooting called Stranger Fruit in the South by Southwest Film Festival in Austin, Texas. The film showed unseen CCTV footage of Michael Brown at the convenience store that he supposedly robbed just before his death, entering the convenience store at 1 that morning on August 9, 2014, the day of his death. The footage showed Brown supposedly trading with the night store clerks a bag of weed for a box of cigarillos. Instead of leaving with the cigarillos, Brown left them behind the counter with the clerks he was exchanging with for safekeeping. The film continues to show Brown entering the store later in the afternoon, calm and collected, talking to the day clerks of the store, wanting to pick up his cigarillos. Dorian Johnson indicated in the documentary, after seeing the footage for the first time after the film was released in 2017, that it was common for people to do trades or exchanges at that specific convenience store for other goods at the store. Robert Mcculloch and police admitted that they were aware of the video footage, and they, as well as the store's lawyer, tried to dispute and discredit Pollock's claims that indicated that no trade was made with Brown and the clerks, and that Pollock didn't even interview the employees of the store. But Pollock showed in his documentary his attempts to try to talk to employees at the store, day shift and night shift, but no one would talk to him about the incident with Mike Brown.
Well, I mean, they probably didn't want to lose their job.
Yeah.
The store owner probably said, you can't talk about this, and threatened, well, not threatened, but said, they don't want to lose their jobs over it. I could see that. Why they wouldn't talk about the incident.
Yeah. I mean, this was a few years later. I mean, there could have been, new people.
Yeah.
There, people could have left.
Yeah.
But it seemed like it was a family store. But it's interesting how, video was edited just to show Mike, shoving the clerk.
Right. They didn't, it showed the things that happened before.
So it's very peculiar, and like the whole story was not told in the beginning.
Yeah.
Like, why would you withhold this information? Why didn't you just tell us, like, hey, this happened and this happened and this happened?
Why do you have to cut and edit?
Yeah.
And just show the parts that make him look like a bad person?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
In February 2020, the new St. Louis County Prosecuting Attorney, Wesley Bell, reopened the investigation against Darren Wilson to see if charges would be placed on him for shooting and the death of Michael Brown Jr. In July, he announced that no charges would be filed against Wilson. Bell stated that in reviewing the evidence that they could not prove under Missouri law beyond a reasonable doubt that Wilson's intent was either to commit murder or manslaughter when he shot Brown. However, he said that the investigation did not exonerate Darren Wilson. Bell continues to state that there were multiple ways that Wilson could have handled the situation differently, but they were investigating beyond a reasonable doubt that a crime had occurred, and the investigation proved that it didn't. That was a journey.
It was very much a journey. There are two sides. I mean, I can see why people are saying, you know, he intentionally shot, and then people saying that it was an accident, and then saying that Brown was the aggressor, and then Brown not being the aggressor. So, I mean, I can definitely see the two sides to this tale.
Yeah.
This is a tragedy. Honestly, a young man lost his life.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like Wilson could have handled the situation better than shooting.
Definitely. In a sense, his life was ruined too. He made a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
He should have, reaped the repercussions,
Mm-hmm.
I think.
For sure. There should be repercussions. I mean, he's no longer on the police force anymore.
He retired, or, he quit.
Okay.
He didn't retire. From what I read and looked into, he has he's moved. I don't think in the St. Louis area anymore, but he's attempted to try to join the police force where he lives. They won't hire him due to the obvious. Yeah, in a sense, like 2 lives were ruined.
Mm-hmm. Well, not just 2, more. I mean, Brown's family in Ferguson.
Yeah, a lot of lives were ruined and changed for the worse and better.
Yeah.
In a sense, like I said before, Ferguson, has been changing. There's now, I believe more black African American policemen,
Police officers.
police officers,
Because women can be police officers.
Police officers on the force. And I know right away after everything happened, they appointed a new police chief of Ferguson who was African American.
Good.
They've been, even all over St. Louis, they have like a black mayor, I believe now. The district prosecuting attorney, Wesley Bell, he's black now. And so they're, people are doing what the man said at the funeral. They've been voting, trying to reflect their community,
They're trying to make a change for the better.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't have been this tragic event that showed that you have the power to change it.
Mm-hmm.
But at least it's bettering now.
Yeah, there was an interesting statement that actually Brown's aunt said, that he told her that he always wanted to change the world, to shake the world, and with his music. But in a sense, he obviously did that, unfortunately, with his death.
He did that. He is doing it.
Yeah, he's still doing it, and that statement, hands up, don't shoot. It's continued to be said. Unfortunately, when we we recently just had another protest event this past year in 2020, and people are still saying it.
Heavy topic.
It is.
But this needed to be said. This needed to be discussed because it is a crime in Missouri. This was a journey.
But, I felt a tie to it since, Ferguson's not far where I grew up, and, watching it unfold was not, and it was, it was hard, but it was also empowering because, you could see these people coming together and saying, like, hey, this needs to stop.
Yeah.
And I think both of us, we want to try to help support these people. Black Lives Matter movement.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, of course. And knowledge and facts need to be put out there.
Mm-hmm.
You're trying to do this non-biased. If it comes across one way or the other, sorry, don't mean it. Michelle did a lot of research on this, and she has a lot of sources, and it was facts that we were discussing. I still think you need to check references if you hire someone. I know that's a terrible takeaway on this. Definitely need to do that. Parcels.
Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed.
We'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.